Okay, so it's time to examine the historic iPhone 2G.
I decided to spend at least a week carrying this as my only phone so that I could report back to you guys what the experience was like. In order to use this with my cellular service, I had to extract the SIM card from my iPhone 5, and then I had to place it in an adapter so that it would fit properly in the iPhone 2G, since it uses a full-sized SIM card. Thanks to some suggestions from my viewers, I tried installing a customized firmware known as WhiteDoor. You can find out more about this by visiting www.whitedoor.com, and yes, those are zeros for the word door. This firmware upgrades the original iPhone to the same look and feel as iOS 7 that you would be running on a modern iPhone. It updates all of the built-in apps and adds quite a bit of new functionality to the phone. It even adds all of the new sounds and ringtones. And believe it or not, it still runs at an acceptable speed.
However, don't be mistaken, this is not iOS 7 and it's not going to run any applications designed for iOS 7.
So as usual, I've created a variety of categories for which I will be rating this phone. Voice calls work just fine, and there was no noticeable difference in audio quality or functionality in this regard. So as a voice phone, it gets a passing grade. Text messages also worked fine. However, I ran into some initial issues due to the fact it does not support iMessage, and many of my friends' phones would still think I was using an iPhone 5 and attempt to send me texts using iMessage, and so I'd never get them.
Still, that isn't the phone's fault, so I'm not going to dock it for that, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a passing grade.
Email worked perfectly with my Gmail account. Although a few features are missing that I was accustomed to, I had no problems reading and answering emails on the go. I will give it a passing grade.
Okay, so this phone does not support FaceTime, and even if it did, it has no frontal camera. You might be able to run an older version of Skype on it using the back camera, but I don't see what the point would be because you wouldn't really be able to have face-to-face communication. So I'm going to give this phone a complete and total fail on video chat.
The built-in apps work great. In fact, I like the built-in Google Maps more than my iPhone 5's Apple Maps. This thing's surprisingly fast and highly accurate. Safari worked on most websites I tried, but it was pretty darn slow. YouTube seemed to work just fine. The weather app works great, as does the calculator and the voice recorder and the alarm clock. Using third-party apps was a mixed bag. When I used Apple's firmware, I found it impossible to install any apps because everything I tried kept complaining that I needed a newer firmware. However, the WhiteDoor firmware uses a custom app store that has access to older versions of apps that should work on this phone. So I was able to install many popular apps such as Wikipedia and games such as Angry Birds and Zombie Highway.
However, there's probably a lot of newer apps that just flat out aren't going to be available, and even if they are, they're just not going to be compatible, so you're going to have to keep that in mind.
Music uploaded through USB or downloaded from iTunes plays just fine. I was able to interface the phone with my car's Bluetooth connection as well. I'm going to give music a passing grade. You can get the Netflix app to run on here, but apparently it no longer works with the Netflix service, so there's kind of no point. Regular movies uploaded to the phone over USB or downloaded through iTunes seem to play just fine. I'm going to go ahead and give movies a passing grade.
So the iPhone 2G has 3 types of wireless connectivity. It's got your Bluetooth for connecting to either, a headpiece or your car stereo, things like that. It's also got wireless B and G, which is usable for, using the internet when you're at home or you're at some place that offers, Wi-Fi service available. And it also has edge data connection. Now, this is for the cellular network. Now, this is, older than the current generation of either 3G, LTE, or 4G type data networks, so this is a lot slower. However, I've been using it on the Edge connection, and I've used all the internal apps, using the weather, the Google Maps, stuff like that, email, and it works just fine. Now, granted, I wasn't using it for trying to download movies or music, and I bet if I were, then I would have probably noticed a lot of slowdown. But generally, I found that the slowness factor, like if I was using the web browser, was caused by the web browser, not by the data connection.
As for a physical connection, it uses the same 30-pin dot connector that most Apple devices have used since 2003. There are still plenty of available accessories that make use of this connector. I'm going to give it a passing grade on connectivity. I have taken some still pictures for you to look at under various different lighting conditions. The camera is of poor quality, and I've seen cheap toy cameras that actually produce better still pictures than this iPhone.
Okay, so what about video recording? Well, the bad news is that when this phone came from Apple, the firmware did not support any kind of video recording function at all. Now, the good news is the white door firmware does add that functionality.
However, the video quality is still not very good. It records at 384 by 288 pixels, which is not even VGA resolution.
So this is basically what my studio set looks like using the video recorder on the iPhone 2G. Okay, so how do we grade the camera on the iPhone 2G? Now, let's not beat around the bush here. As far as a smartphone goes, the internal camera on this phone is total crap. However, if you were to compare it to a phone like this, it produces the pictures and video that you would really expect to see from a phone like this. So in that regard, I'm just going to go ahead and leave that up to your subjective opinion. Just go ahead and post in the comments what you thought of the camera, whether it's passable or not. But I'm just going to kind of leave it a gray area. So, what's my final judgment? Okay, the truth is, I've used this for a little over a week, and I can get by with it. And it makes a great spare phone if you need a backup for some reason or another. But I was very happy to go back to my iPhone 5. Let me follow up with this. I would actually not recommend that you actually go out and buy one of these phones with the idea of using it as your day-to-day phone. And the reason actually has nothing to do with the information that I've presented in this video. The reason has to do with the fact that these phones are becoming collectible. In fact, if you have a 4GB version in original box, it's already very collectible, and you can find them going on eBay for hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars. So the reason I say that is if you have one of these phones and it's in decent shape, I would actually recommend putting it away somewhere. Maybe periodically take it out and charge the battery, but otherwise try to keep it off and keep it in a nice, cool, dry environment because this phone's going to be worth some money someday. Okay, having said that, if you're in the market for a really cheap iPhone and you were thinking about getting one of these so that you could put the white door operating system on it, I'm going to go ahead and steer you away from that. The reason is you can get an iPhone 3G for roughly the same cost because they're not really collectible and there's a ton of them out on eBay and they'll run the white door operating system too. And they're a good bit more powerful than the iPhone 2G. So the 3G would be the entry-level point that I would consider if I were looking for a cheap iPhone just to use. All right, well, thanks for watching my video. Put some comments in, tell me what you thought, and tell me what you'd like to see in the next video. And until then, I'll see you next time.